The oil market is incredibly sensitive to geopolitics. What do we mean by that? Well, no other commodity is as closely entangled with international relations as crude oil is. How individual countries and regions get on with each other and whether major producers or consumers are stable and prospering are crucial questions for the oil market. And that's in part because many large oil producing nations have been caught up in major geopolitical events in recent decades. Obviously, anything that disrupts the steady flow of supply from a large producing country is going to have a negative impact on the supply-demand balance and will most likely lead to higher oil prices. The war between Iran and Iraq in the 1980s, the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait in 1990 and the two Gulf Wars that followed are examples of major oil producers that experienced a sharp decline in production because of conflict. Internal disruptions such as periodic unrest in Nigeria's oil-producing regions or the Libyan civil war can also lead to supply reductions. Geopolitical disputes between a major producer and major consumers can also lead to lower supplies. We see this most notably with Russia since its invasion of Ukraine, but two other major producers, Iran and Venezuela, are also under various Western sanctions as well. So, obviously, any news that emerges around those producers will have a significant impact on the oil price. Just as geopolitical difficulties lift the oil price, any signs of an improving geopolitical environment tend to reduce the oil price. So, news of an improvement in the situation of a major oil producer would be taken as a bearish price signal because this would enable suppliers to increase their oil production and their exports. So, for example, any talk of a ceasefire or peace deal in Ukraine, any signs of renewed talks between Iran and the US, those would likely move the market significantly to the downside. Now, we talked a bit about how geopolitical issues affect producer countries, but geopolitics is also highly relevant to the buyers of oil as well, particularly major consumers like China, India, the US, Western Europe. Any issues that could affect demand in those countries would be a very bearish price signal. Lockdowns during the pandemic are a great example of demand destruction in consumer countries that led to a collapse in oil prices. A negative geopolitical environment is generally bad for the global economy. So when economies are weak or in recession, they tend to reduce oil consumption. Analysts in the oil markets watch carefully for signs of tension between China and the US, for example, because any disputes between those two giant consumers of crude oil are likely to negatively impact the health of the global economy, reducing overall demand. Elections in a major consumer would also make the oil markets very jittery. US elections are particularly closely watched to see if the winners are likely to be more or less supportive of renewable energy versus fossil fuels. The importance of geopolitics to the oil price means that oil traders watch news headlines very closely. Oil is the most political and the most interconnected of all the commodity markets. So to be a successful oil trader, you need to closely track the changing fortunes of producers and consumers, as well as to watch how they're getting along.